Thank you for joining our Talent Matters webinar. We've done a few of these now. Today, we will be talking about recruitment post furlough. It was actually quite a difficult title to put on this webinar because there was so many other areas that it could well have covered. Kind of recruitment through the winter, the potential second wave that's coming, rising cases. So there could have been all sorts that we called it, but we tried to keep it nice and positive after the furlough scheme in the announcement of the latest job support scheme that was announced last week. So we're going to try and predict and discuss what is happening and what is going to happen, and of course what agencies and businesses can do about some of the changes and some of the things that are going to happen over the next few months. You'll see today we have Kevin Green, the man himself who's joining us today. He is, and it's a fairly long list of achievements, but he's the ex-CEO of the REC, the ex-HRD of the Royal Mail, best-selling author. I'm sure he'll tell you about that. He is the strategic advisor to a number of businesses, including Wave, and he is an all-round titan of the industry. So really pleased to have Kevin talk to us today. So say hello, Kevin.
Hi, everybody. It's not often you're called a titan. Rather large, I think, is the definition.
A bastion of the industry, bastion of recruitment. So, of course, there's on the side panel there are a couple of you have already said hello. So please do get involved and say something, anything, questions. If you agree with what we're saying, then say so. If you disagree, then also say so. Any questions or anything, then just fire them through. We're going to aim for about 40 minutes ish. But if anyone knows Kevin and has heard Kevin talk, that might be a bit of a tall order. But I'm sure we'll be okay. So let's get cracking. And I think the first thing to ask you, Kevin, is you're obviously looking at, you're kind of strategic advisor to a lot of businesses, and throughout all of this, you have been advising, involved with different companies. You did for a while putting together a fairly helpful and useful blog around what was happening in the boardrooms of businesses. We kind of come out of lockdown, and we could be on the edge of another lockdown. Who knows? But what's your general view on how businesses are feeling and some of the conversations that are happening in boardrooms around?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things, isn't there? One is, I think, this has been going on since March. So I think we've been through phases, really. There's been different elements of what's been going on, and businesses have to survive and then acclimatize, adapt, and then something else has happened. So there's been three big phases, really, and I think we're in an interesting one now. The first one was clearly about survival. Everyone just had to batten down the hatches, think about liquidity, get cash in, chase debtors, think about other ways of getting cash into the business, either shareholder funds, borrowing money from government. But clearly that was just about getting enough cash so that you can see yourself getting to the other side, and there were a few businesses that fell by the wayside early on. But I think that was the focus very, very early, the first few weeks. And then I think you went into a second period, which was, how do I keep trading? How do I continue to service my customers? How do I sell my product? If you're a recruitment agency, it was about how do I continue to, help my clients find skills, talent. How do I engage them? Clearly, there was a lot less around. So there was about how do we continue? So it was a bit about continuation. But at the same time, there was also this piece about how do we, what do I do with my staff? Because clearly big cost. we've got a lot less activity. So I think many organisations, particularly in the recruitment sector, furloughed a high percentage of staff. And again, that conserved cash, but it also meant that we were looking after the critical skills and talents that our people have, so that if there was an upturn, we had people available to come back into our businesses. So I think it was a great thing by the government. It was a win-win-win. It's a win for the government because people didn't become unemployed. It's a win for businesses because we could retain our skills and talent, but do that at no cost or very little cost. So that's sort of where I think really was what we were doing through the summer. I think what we then started to see, if you look at the economic data, there was there's a bit of a revision from the ONS yesterday. It said Q2 wasn't a decline of 20.4, it was 19.8. But we've never had a quarter in the history of our economy where the economy has shrunk by 20% in a 3-month period. I mean, it is unprecedented. It is unparalleled. But what we've seen since is we've seen growth. We have seen records months of economic growth, both in June and July. July is the month of the last set of figures, and we had a growth of about 6.6%. And normally, you get growth of 0.2, 0.3. You might get 0.8, and it's a good month, or even 1%, and we're booming. So to grow by 6.6% in a month is pretty remarkable. So it does show you that things were starting to come back. And I think there was certainly a feeling of confidence in businesses, more confidence, shall we say, that they could start to see consumers were starting to spend again. They could start to see, from a recruitment perspective, a few more jobs coming in, less layoffs. So I think it was sort of, people were beginning to get a bit more confident. And there was a lot of talk about, what type of shape recovery we have. And there were economists that were saying we were going to have a very much of a V shape, very sharp down, and then a very fast recovery. And I think most people now recognize it's most probably more of a U shape. We've gone down incredibly quickly. We're trundling along. There is a bit of growth, but it hasn't really taken off. So I think that's sort of where we are from an economic perspective. And perhaps we'll talk about the jobs market in a moment. But what I think that means for recruiters is quite interesting, because I think there was clearly an uptick in activity. Clients starting to hire again, certainly in some sectors. Construction there was a lot of growth across the last couple of months, but also pharmaceutical sector, obviously public sector's doing okay, health is doing okay. So there's a number of sectors where there was quite a lot of growth, but there was other sectors where they're incredibly depressed. Retail, obviously, hospitality being the obvious ones. But again, a lot of businesses also thinking seriously about investment. So I think what we've got is a picture where it really is driven by, and if you listen to economists, what they'll fundamentally talk about is confidence. And there's two levels of things, two things that I always track. One is there's something called the GfK monitor of consumer confidence, which basically tracks how consumers are feeling about life in general, but particularly about their potential spending habits. And what we've seen is that has recovered reasonably well, but has sort of plateaued in the last month or so. So I think I would be saying to people, keep an eye on that, the GfK tracking of consumer confidence. The thing that was interesting yesterday was the CBI put out some data which was really quite worrying, which was about business investment, which really is depressed by about 30% on previous years of what we would be seeing. And I think that's a lot about businesses going, even while we can see trade coming back, we're doing okay, we've got liquidity to get to the other side, I'm not really going to buy new technology, I'm not going to buy new machinery, I'm not going to hire a lot more people, so I'll just wait it out. So I think what we've got into the business psyche is a sort of a holding pattern. So I think that's obviously going on. So what I think all this means for recruiters, I suppose, is, I think we'll see some ongoing marginal improvement, but I don't think we're going to see, things get back to any kind of normal until well into 2021 and potentially the summer of 21 rather than the first few months. I don't think things will get worse, and I think there'll be a marginal improvement. But I think, if you think about a U shape, I think we're at the bottoms before we just start to come out. And as it comes out, it starts slowly, and then hopefully it will accelerate. but this is clearly driven by managing the health crisis. Clearly, you have to make sure that people are safe, and government is obviously responding to local situations with local restrictions and lockdowns. And nationally, clearly, there is an idea that we need to contain the virus as best we can, and the numbers indicate it isn't under control. So I think you might see, greater measures by government, but I think they do realise that it's all about balance. Government are trying to keep the economy going and want to keep people in employment, hence the new government scheme. I'm sure we'll come to that in a minute. But what they're also trying to do is they want to contain the virus. So it's a confidence management thing. And I think from an economic perspective, government's done very well. I think most people give it an 8 or 9 out of 10. From managing the health crisis, I think it's a 2 or a 3. I think it's been, some bits have been, chaotic in reality. So I think that's where we are.
I think that's one of the key things with this is that, this is a health related recession. It's not because it's not anything financial. It hasn't been driven by, financial crisis. So that's, I suppose, pleasing in a way, and should bring confidence back very quickly. But of course, the challenge with that is that it's driven by as you just said, it's driven by the performance of the virus and the health, the way in which we react from a health perspective. And I don't know about everybody else. Well, I think I probably do. We're all desperately trying to avoid another national lockdown because of all the ramifications that comes with. And you mentioned about businesses not making investments. I think some businesses are using this opportunity to really review what they do, but recruitment wise, it is all about keeping cash, isn't it? Making sure you've got cash in the bank to pay the wages. Well, obviously, what with furlough coming to an end as well, some tricky decisions to be made there. But I also think that during the lockdown, it was a really good time for a lot of companies to really look at what their business was doing. Really look at those expenses that were going out. I know, we did that. We looked at what we were spending, and you find these random expenses that, when things are flying, you don't worry too much about, this subscription to this little piece of monitoring software or whatever, tech or whatever. You don't mind about that. But when you really have to look at it and go, do we really need this? So I think that's been quite positive, and a lot of businesses are a lot leaner as a result.
Yeah, there's a couple of things in there, Dave, that are worth highlighting. One is clearly, I think you've got to be lean, you've got to be efficient, and make sure the business is effective. So you don't want to carry costs that are draining cash out of the business that aren't delivering any value. So I think that's clearly one thing. And I think most businesses are quite adept at that. I think the bit that's interesting is actually standing back and reflecting. And I think there has been an opportunity, certainly for recruitment businesses, to stand back and go, what are we really here to do? What is our purpose? Why do we exist? And I think it has been an opportunity. And I've talked to lots of both leaders of other businesses, but leaders within recruitment businesses, owner managers and directors, who have said, look, we need to really focus. We were trying to do everything for everybody. And I always say to businesses, what do you want to be famous for? What do you want to be great at? Because you can't be great at 20 things. You've got to be great at 1 or 2 things. And I think that one of the things that, recruitment businesses try and do is we're obsessed by growth. And I think one of the things you've really got to think about, it's growth of the bottom line that's important, not growth of the top line. So I think there's lots of recruitment businesses that are out there just chasing business and doing this and doing that. I think what they've had a chance to do is go, well, okay, what do we want to be great at? And I think that's a really important question, because I think it leads you into, how do we compete? How are we different? The thing is, you don't want to be a Me Too recruiter, because if you're a Me Too recruiter, then how your clients will make decisions is based on price. And if they're making decisions on price, your margins are under pressure. because I've recruited procurement people, and they're brilliant. They're salespeople in reverse. What they do is they say to you, Dave, we love your business. You've done great work for us this year, but we've got someone around the corner that's prepared to do it for 16% rather than 18.
And we've all heard that, haven't we? We've all heard that.
And the point is if you haven't got a defendable position, then it's incredibly difficult not to have your margins eroded over time, which then means you're doing as much work and earning less money. And I think recruitment businesses have learned through this period that you've got to be great at what you do. You've got to be, if you're a local generalist agency, it's about dominating your geographical space. If you're a specialist agency, it's about being an inch wide and a mile deep. And I can talk, if you want to, Dave, a bit about what you should be doing with clients and candidates, because I think there's a really clear set of things that business need to do. But the first thing is make sure you're very, very focused. You know where you're competing. You know what you're great at. You've got the skills and capabilities. You've got a great bank of candidates, and you know your clients well enough to be able to really anticipate those needs and be taking great candidates to them. So I think that's a great point, really, which is be very, very focused on who you are, what you want to be famous for, and how you compete.
I think that's really, really interesting and really useful, actually, because it's so easy, especially again when things are flying. You want to be involved in everything.
Yeah.
You want to have a piece of this and a piece of that. And it is difficult to make sure you've got that point when those people do come calling and sort of trying to chip away at your rates and your prices and all that sort of stuff, because it is so easy also to slip into that. Okay, well, I'll do it for 14%, and then they'll be back. They'll find someone that does it for 13, and then then 12, and you just keep going down and down and down. And but sometimes you can be so caught up in the rush of it all. You do business for the sake of doing business, for closing a deal and for
bringing money in and people being busy and all of that. So I think really look at where you can defend your margins. Think about what markets you want to be in. And I think the thing that I would say is I think the skills and talent shortages that were across the labour market pre-COVID are still there. So there are some employers that have been really quite imaginative and have gone out and tried to suck up some talent and find great people. But I think the other thing I would be saying to recruiters is get really, really close to your clients. So really understand where they are in the cycle. How is business for them? Are they letting people go? If they're letting people go, and if they're letting good people go, offer to do outplacement, offer to provide services to those individuals, because you want to get good people on your books, because I'll come to that in a moment about the candidate. But clearly, really get close to your clients. And again, one of the things I've seen is recruiters have sort of furloughed half their consultants, and I'm going, so who's phoning the clients? Who's keeping close to the clients? And you need to invest more time in clients, because clients are busy normally and they just want you to fill the job that they've got available. At the moment, there is a lot less activity, obviously, in hiring space. So you really got to get underneath and ask those real deep consultant questions. What's going on with your market? Where are you still short of talent? If I brought you candidates, who would you really be still interested in seeing? Tell us how it's going to play out for you in the next 3 months. Are you letting people go? Where are you letting people go? Where are you hiring? So you really have to behave as a consultant and understand your client in a lot of detail, because that enables you to be able to do a couple of things. One is, I think you've got to be, and I've said this to recruiters throughout this sort of pandemic, you've got to work on goodwill equity. You've got to give a little bit away. You've got to do favors for people, because what it will do is it will position you so that when work does come back, when they go, well, who are we going to give this to? Well, the people that have just done us a couple of favors and helped us do stuff are the people that they will go to and turn to first. And you want to be front of mind. Secondly, I think is, I think if the more you understand your clients, the more you have the ability to position candidates and potential candidates in the right way at the right time to the right person. And so all of that, I think, is you've got to talk more consistently, more frequently to your clients, and you've got to go deeper. You've got to understand them, their requirements, and where they are a bit more. So that's what I'd say about clients. And I'm really keen, the people that are on this thing, I'm keen to know whether you're growing, whether you're in decline. Anything that we say that stimulates a thought or a question will be great. I'll hand back to Dave, but if you want me to rant on about candidates, I'll go on about candidates.
Well, we can be led by you guys if you want us to do that. But I've got a few other questions and thoughts here that I'd be interested in getting your thoughts on. So the job support scheme, end of the furlough, which I think everybody has really appreciated the furlough scheme, but I think we all recognise we can't keep doing it the way that we were. So they introduced the job support scheme, which has been, kind of gratefully received, but actually, like a lot of these things, the devil is in the detail, and the sort of the prospect of it being better to have one full-time person than having two part-time people, was a bit of an oversight, and it's clearly not as supportive as the furlough scheme. But one of the we can talk about what you think about that, but there's one of the things that's occurred to me is, one of the last times that we were actually together was when we did our Talent Matters event about flexible working. Now, do you think the job support scheme will potentially accelerate the opportunity for people to work less hours for a little bit less money, and have a greater work-life balance? Do you think this will accelerate that, and people will be used to working 70% of their time? Because I actually think a lot of jobs, and we saw this sort of 4-day working week proposed before, and broadly, I think you could probably get most of your work that you need to do done in 4 days, or 70% or 80% of your time if you wanted to, and then have the rest of the time with your family.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm a great supporter, as you know, in flexible working, and I think there's a great opportunity for recruiters, by the way. I think that one of the things that candidates are going to be, when they're looking for jobs, they are going to be asking about flexibility. How flexible am I going to be able to do this job? So that, I think, is an opportunity for recruiters, but I also think we've got to educate employers. I think they really do need to think about this is a way of differentiating their jobs. We're quite happy for people to work 3 days or 4 days, or long hours or short hours, or 9-day fortnights, or whatever. So I think there's a real opportunity in that space for recruiters to be able to think about flexibility as a key way of matching candidates to opportunity. So I think that's a sort of a catch-all. I think in terms of there will be greater requests for working differently from candidates and people in the labour market. I think a lot of people have got used to working at home. I think there are people that like it. I think there are some that dislike it intensely and want to just get back to an office. But I also think that most people recognise that a lot of work can be done this way. And it's good for the environment, less commuting. My son spends an hour and a half a day traveling in and traveling out. That's 3 hours a day, and if he gives an hour and a half back to his employer, he's got an hour and a half to do things he likes doing, rather than standing on a station, getting a train, going down a tube, getting off, walking to so I think the time saving is going to be something, and working from home, that employers are going to have to embrace. So I think that means that there will be a growth in flexible working and a demand for it from candidates. I think the government scheme might facilitate that a bit. I think it's the right type of move, actually, by the government. I don't think they should have continued the furloughing scheme. I think if you can't find a way of bringing people back after 7 or 8 months, it's unlikely you're going to bring them back. So I think a lot of the jobs in there are most probably redundant. But I think there is this idea that we want to keep people actively engaged in the labour market and doing some work. And so I think the idea of guaranteeing people some kind of additional payment or government subsidy if they're working a third of their time seems eminently sensible. It means that it's saying to the employer, you know, keep them on, use them to do at least a third of their work or half or whatever. They'll get a little bit less money, but you know, it gets, again, it's a thoughtful scheme, which it means that, you know, you can't just use it to keep people on furlough indefinitely. They've got to be in the business. They've got to be working. Again, you've got to make a decision if you top up to 100% or whether you leave it at 78, because there's clear that the government will pay 22% and you've got to pay at least 55. So I think you end up with sort of 77% as the sort of minimum as such. And I think it's good. So I think employers will use it clearly in some sectors where there is some activity going, but not enough to bring everyone back. And I think it is good from an employee or a candidate perspective, is that they retain their job. They're still being paid quite a lot of their funding, and they're keeping their skills fresh and active, and they're being involved in the world of work. So I think there's a lot of, you know, there's a win for the government, I think there's a win for business, and there's a win for individuals. I think there will be a huge spike in unemployment. There's no doubt. I mean, Andy Haldane was saying yesterday from the Bank of England, he thinks it will go up to 7.5%. I think it'll be closer to 10%. I think we'll have 1980s level of unemployment. I think we'll go up to 3 million. But I just want to say one thing about unemployment, and this is a real great message for recruiters. Your clients are going to believe it's going to be easy to find candidates because there's high unemployment. One of the things you clearly have to do is educate them and go, yeah, but the people you want, the data scientists, you know, the great customer service person, these aren't the people that have been made redundant. I'm afraid it's going to be, you know, the people at the front of the labour market that work in retail, that work in hospitality, that work in coffee shops, that, you know, deliver things to your door. Those are the jobs that I think we're going to find, certainly in the big first wave, which is just about to come, are being made redundant. So as I said, you've got to educate your clients, because they're going, well, I don't know why you're saying this is difficult. Well, 3 million people unemployed. You're going, yeah, but the people that you want to hire are the people that are employed in organizations, the people that, you know, so you're going to end up with a skills and talent mismatch, which I think is going to be a big challenge for recruiters.
I think you'll probably see what has happened in the past, when, you know, the clients will turn around and say, oh, I could do it myself. I can find these people, and then off they trundle to try and then figure out that, again, yeah, those people are, you know, still employed, or you know, not quite so easily moved. But Tracy's just sent a message through, which kind of brings me on to my next point. Quite nicely, because I wanted to talk about monitoring software. So we've seen that in the news a couple of days ago, and you know, in terms of people working remotely, ironically, you know, the report on, I think it was on the BBC, these people, but you know, they want to see how much people are typing and whatever. I think by and large, and to Tracy's point, that there is the danger that people will be working more and longer and unable to switch off when they're working from home, which is, you might think, is great for the employer in the short term, but actually in the mid to long term, you know, their quality of work is going to decrease, and you know, face burnout and, you know, various mental health issues or whatever it may be. So I do agree, Tracy, with your point that there is that element of always on. You know, we kind of had that with, you know, smartphones and everything. We can access stuff all the time. But now, if our office is in our living room, you know, there is a danger.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's a couple of things that are really quite interesting about this, and we're only just starting to get data in terms of what happened. But there was clearly a significant improvement in productivity. There's absolutely no doubt that employers have said they were getting, you know, as great an output, if not a greater output, from their people than they would have done in an office environment. And I don't think there's any surprise in that. I think it was use of time more effectively. You know, a lot of people commute. You know, a lot of people end up moving around a lot, you know, going to meetings in different parts of a city or whatever, and that takes time. And
or even an office.
Yeah, up and down. I mean, office, and up and downstairs. But also, you're right, in offices, you know, you have chats and you have all that informal stuff. So I think, you know, I get that. What's interesting is that most people are saying that seems to be dropping off now. I mean, I think there was a novelty about working remotely. I think there is an issue about people's hours. I mean, I certainly spend longer on my computer than I've ever done. And the days that do seem to go on, you do seem to work into the evening a bit more and in the morning. So, but I think lots of employers are trying to give people guidance and support and help them. But I want to come back to surveillance software. I mean, for me, this is just like, this is slight madness. I mean, Barclays were doing this at the beginning of the year and then had to say that they weren't going to do it because they were sort of, their staff were up in arms. And my gut feeling is this, that, I think this is going to create the right type of leadership and management behavior. So what I think it is saying is, and I've always believed this, but it's always been difficult because managers in most organizations are task managers. They manage by looking at people and seeing how wide they're working and have you done that? And is that done? Is that completed? And I don't think you can do that when you're working remotely. I think you've got to trust people. And by trusting people, you've got to be able to articulate the outputs and the outcomes you want and manage people to that. So you don't manage the time, you don't manage the input, you manage the objective. What I want is a brilliant report that identifies what we should be doing. And I need that by next Tuesday. What hours you do, whether you start at 6 a.m, watch breakfast TV, go for a run in the afternoon, as long as I get the report and it's a good enough quality, I'm happy. Our objective is to get into those 6 clients. I don't mind how you do it.
We've got to get away from clocking in and clocking out, right?
And that's the point. So what we're seeing is employers are beginning to trust people. But if you're running surveillance software, you're doing the complete opposite. I am saying to my people, I don't trust you when you're at home to be working on the things you should be doing. And I think that will undermine engagement. You'll get lower productivity. You'll get managers that are managing the input and not the output or the outcome. So I think we've got an opportunity to shift leadership and management behavior, to support people, to motivate them, to inspire them, to encourage them. And that's what leadership is about. It's about being a coach. It's not about, have you done this and where have you been and what time you're doing and your keystrokes are down. I can see what you're watching on your computer. And I think, management and leadership in a knowledge economy is about the soft side, and it's the soft side that gets you results. So don't focus on the input and don't try and manage people in a machine driven way. Encourage them, motivate them, inspire them, ask them to give you more. Allow them to learn and develop and try stuff and make mistakes. Treat people as human beings. You'll get a much greater performance out of them.
Yeah, I can't agree more on the monitoring software stuff. What does it really matter how quickly someone types an email and how many they can type 4,000 words in a minute or whatever it is, but actually it's the quality of what you're typing, right?
But also, let's be honest, human beings are clever. And if I know my keystrokes are being monitored, do you know what I'm going to be doing? All my emails are going to be twice as long, right? They're not going to be any better. They're not going to be any more succinct. They're not going to do anything, but I'm just going to keep typing and, put loads of bits at the beginning, loads of bits at the end. I'll do it because that's what I'm being judged on.
Yeah.
People will know what they're being judged on. Focus on what you want people to deliver, the outcome, and I think you're much better placed.
Yeah, I agree. I agree on that. But talking of kind of working from home, typically the recruitment industry was very office based. It was, you didn't really see too many recruitment businesses where they would allow people working from home. How do you think? Do you think the recruitment businesses that have worked from home will go back into the office and they'll have everyone back into the office? Or do you think we've seen a permanent shift in the recruitment world that consultants can now work at home?
Well, I mean, let me answer it a different way. I think we've seen a whole hybrid. There's loads of people doing slightly different things. For me, I think the key is this. There's 2 things you're trying to do. You're trying to personalize work. You're going to try and get people to work in the way that is best for them. Because if they work in the way that's best for them, they most probably get the right outcomes for you. But at the same time, you've got to optimize. So on one hand, there's personalization. And the fear I think that recruiters have is that everyone's going to want to work different hours. Some people are going to want to start late and finish late. Others are going to want to start early. Some people won't want to work Fridays. Other people don't like Wednesdays or don't want to have Wednesday afternoons. And what they're scared of is all this means it's out of control. Got no control. So there's two things, I think. One is to focus on the outputs out and the outcomes. And we can measure consultants, you know, how many leads have you got? How many opportunities have you created? How many candidates have we got in the pipe? You know, there's ways in which you can measure the outcomes and the output of their work. So I would focus on that. I think candidates are not candidates, but let's say recruitment consultants are going to want to work in a hybrid way. I think they're going to want to spend some time at home because I think they all know that they can get more done. I think they'd also want to, they're normally social animals. They quite like human beings and they like being parts of teams and they like competing and all of that stuff. So if I was running a recruitment business, I'd be looking for some kind of hybrid. I'd be looking to bring people in, not perhaps the whole organization, but on certain days, bring two or three teams together so they can do the social stuff, have a bit of a laugh, do some bonding, then go back to working at home and then bring them back. So, you know, I think over time we'll find people doing 2 days in the office and perhaps 3 at home, or 3 days in the office and a couple at home, and all of that. And I think that gives everyone the benefit of both. You know, those people can be really productive, they can get more done at home, but you get all of that stuff about being part of belonging, feeling you're part of a team, you're part of an organization. And, you know, we like working with other human beings. So I don't think we should deny people that. You know, I mean, one of the things I miss is, you know, the human interaction. You know, team meetings and Zoom meetings and all of that are great, but you don't really have that much soft, you know, you go straight into the business, you get the business done and you move on to the next one, you know.
It's not quite the same, is it?
No.
We haven't talked about Arsenal and Liverpool playing on Monday night at all on this, whereas in person it might have taken up 15 minutes.
Well, I think you might have talked about it a lot. I doubt if I'd have wanted to talk about it very much at all.
So let me just come back at you on some of the things that you've said, because there are going to be recruitment businesses out there and say, yeah, Kevin, do you know what? I get what you're saying. You know, they need to we need to trust them and we need to work on output and whatever. But I know my consultants, my team of 15, 20 consultants, you know, young people, you know, social, all this sort of stuff. They're also very easily distracted. So if I let them go and work from home where they can't really work from home, they're not going to be speaking to clients. They're going to be on FIFA and they're going to be, you know, on TikTok or whatever. And I need to be there. And I need to see them and I need to say, you know, what are you doing today? Who are you speaking today? You know, who are you calling? How many people have you called? You know, I need to see, because if I don't do that, they won't do it. Well, what do you say to that?
Well, I think you're making my point for me, Dave, aren't you? I think what you really say is I don't trust my people. You know, I'm not treating them as an adult. I'm not treating them as somebody that can manage their time. Now, look, if you've got young consultants that have just started, they need to learn. They need to learn the job, and clearly, you do need them to be in an environment where they can learn from others. So. You know, I recognize there are different times in people's career, but if you've got a high performing or an adequately performing recruiter, then first thing I would say is talk to them about what works for them. You don't have to have everybody at home or everybody in the office. You can end up with some kind of environment that works brilliantly for the business, brilliantly for the consultants, and gives you greater output and outcome. You know, I think what you'll find, though, there will be some recruitment leaders that believe that recruitment's got to be done the same way as it's always been done. Everyone's got to be in the office, got to ring the bell every time we get a sale. Fine, that's up to them. What they will do is they will lose some high quality consultants that will want to work in a different way because they've seen they can do their job and perform well doing it in a different way. So you've got to think about the retention of your own talent and capability during this period as we start to think about, you know, how, you know, hybrid working is what I call it, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're running out of time. Time flies as usual when we're talking. So if anyone's got any questions or whatever, now would be the time to up your keystrokes in the panel. But whilst maybe someone is frantically typing away, what would you, three things that a recruitment business should be doing now? You know, they've hung on by their fingertips. What three things would you say for them to do now?
Well, I'll do one in each. So the golden triangle of recruitment is quite simple, really. It's clients, candidates, and your people. So I'll do one in each of those, really. So the first one, let's do candidates, because we haven't talked a lot about them. So I would be really sucking up every brilliant candidate. I would be investing a lot of time, particularly in markets where you know there are skill and talent shortages. I would be sucking up as many people as possible in that space. I'd be looking to represent them exclusively, and I would be proactively taking them to the clients who potentially I'm aware of are interested in that skill and capability that they have. So I'd be incredibly proactive. I'd be building relationships with candidates, because I believe, particularly if you're operating in areas where there are shortages, that it will be a big differentiator. And I think that businesses are always on the lookout for talent. So if you can talk to someone and go, look, I've got this guy or this woman, she's absolutely fantastic. You know, this is her track record, this is her pedigree, really keen to work in your organization. If I'm an HR person or a hiring manager, I'm going to spend a bit of time and see them, particularly if it's an area, even if I haven't got a vacancy. So you've got to be proactive. So I think get the candidates, get high quality candidates, and there will be quite a lot floating around, and there'll be a lot that are thinking about doing something different. So I think that's one. Secondly, you have got, as I've already said, really, you've got to be much, much closer. So this is what I would do. So some people often ask me to talk to their consulting teams or their recruitment teams. And you know what I do? I say, just tell me about your top 10 clients. And they start telling me I'm not interested in that. Tell me about their businesses. What's happened in their business? How are they trading? What are they doing about their workforce management? What skills are in short supply? What's their hiring process? What are they really looking for? You ask them 10 questions, and you know what? Even good consultants often get stuck at one or two. You know, they haven't really spent the time, because there's been a plethora of businesses looking to hire. You've got to work that much higher at understanding your clients' long-term requirements, because actually they may not be hiring now, but they might be in a month or 2 months or 3 months or 6 months. So you've got to be aware that what they're going to be hiring, what they're looking for, and looking for that talent while you're doing all that work with a candidate pool. So I think those two things are essential. The third thing, though, is really about your consultants. We talked about the hours and all of that, but you've got to be focusing on developing these consultants. You know, I think we get lazy when times are good in recruitment. You've got to really develop these people and turn them into the best consultants they could possibly be. And that means feedback. I always talk about focus on people's strengths. I always talk about 5 to 1. You know, 5 pieces of positive feedback to any 1 piece of development feedback. But are you spending your time really coaching your consultants in the 2 things I've just said? Really getting underneath, building a relationships with the candidates where you know there's a deficit. Are you really getting them to support them, going in and having much more meaningful conversations with your clients? So those are my 3 pieces of advice to a recruiter. You know,
super. And I think, you know, some of the development side would probably, I guess a lot of people would say they do develop, but they maybe end up being they're firefighting, they're answering specific queries, specific issues on specific jobs or roles they're working on, rather than trying to take a more of a holistic view. We did get a question in from Amna. Hi, Amna. Thank you for coming on. So Amna's talking about recruiters, and they're still relying on the traditional CV experience, and we're looking at transferable skills and how that can work for recruitment agencies. And I think that's spot on. I think we should be looking at the transferable skills rather than just trying to almost keyword match experience and qualifications and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there is a thing about skills and experience which are really important to employers, but they're interested in more than that. And I think your ability to be able to sell a candidate has to be based on more than what's written on their CV. If you're just taking, I don't know, LinkedIn profiles and CVs and banging them in front of your clients, I think you're going to have a really tough time. I think businesses are going to be hiring less, but they're going to be hiring people where they really want to make sure they're going to add some value. So I think they're going to be much more interested in your ability to pitch a client on more than their CV. I think we're going back to when consultants were really consultants. That matching process is something which is more than just, they've worked at these 3 companies and they've got these skills. It's more about, I think they'd fit with your culture. I understand the team. I think they complement what you've currently got. I think they'd work really effectively with that team leader. And at the same time, this person's got the technical skills, but really might not fit in your organization. That's what I'm looking for. I've been a client of recruitment agencies. I'm looking for some added value. I want you to tell me more about, otherwise, what's the point? If I can get all the experience and the skills in a CV, I might as well not bother having a recruitment agency. I could do that myself. I want you to be my brand ambassador, position my job, trying to attract people I can't attract myself. I want you to bring me candidates and tell me the things that you think are brilliant about them, but the things that you think might not work. That's the value of having a recruitment partner that's doing the job properly.
And I suppose, for everything you said about getting to know the client, there is also that to get to know the candidate and to try and understand, what the candidate is thinking and what they want to do, and what their motivations are, what their experience is, because it's at that point you can then see, maybe even sometimes the candidate doesn't know they've got that transferable skill, but they have. But then the flip side of that, to be fair, is then you again go back to the recruiters that say, I spent 15-20 minutes talking to this one candidate, had a lovely chat and all this sort of stuff, and then could never get hold of them again. They disappeared off and could never speak to them. So
I think that's fair. I think that's part of life, isn't it? The question is can you build relationships where people, I don't know. Yeah, but there are recruiters out there, that I've worked with throughout my whole career. There are people you go back to. Every time I'm looking for talent, I can tell you the 3 or 4 people I'd go to for different skills and different requirements. So, you can do that at both a candidate level and a client level. People buy people, and relationships are very underestimated in our industry. We talk about them, but we then act like transactional salespeople. And in reality, a relationship is something you develop over time. There's a depth to it, and one of the things that if you treat people well, you really get to understand candidates. You put 4 or 5 of them up for a big job. The question you've got is, where do I go with those other 4 candidates that I built the relationship with? You go out of your way to find opportunities. Even if you haven't got the gig, you help them. You give them advice around their CV. The point is you've then added value to them. They'll come back to you. They'll also, particularly if you're working in the perm space and at a senior level or mid-level, they're potential, hiring managers. They're people that give you gigs. I think you've just got to remember that this is a relationship business. And if we treat it like it's whacking CVs in front of people, then actually we're right to get treated like we talked at the beginning, which is actually, I'm only going to give you 8% for that because that's not really a high value proposition. You're looking at CVs, you're spamming stuff and sending them to me. I'll give you 8% for that. But if you can really find me talent I can't find myself and bring me brilliant people that fit my organization because you know them and you know us, then actually I might pay you 20%.
And I'll continue to pay you 20%. It won't just be one job. We are fast approaching a 50-minute webinar, and we still have people on, which is great. But if we keep talking, I'm sure at some point people will start thinking about lunch and drifting off. So I think it's probably a good time to wrap it up. I think there's been some really, really good stuff there. Always enjoy talking through all of this stuff with you, Kevin. And hopefully everybody who has been watching has got something from it. Thank you for the questions on the side. It's been good fun. We have more webinars, so watch out for those as they come. I'll be posting them on my LinkedIn feed and on the Wave feed as well. If you are interested to know what Wave does, and maybe you don't have a clue what we do, then go and check out our website, wave-rs.co.uk. We produced 2 main products, RecWebs, which is a website building tool, and Wave Tracker, which is a job distribution and job board analytics tool. Both of them are brilliant. So I'm biased, obviously, but go and check them out. That would be great. And yeah, look out for more webinars. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kevin. Super work.
Good, I enjoyed it as always, Dave. Keep up the good work.